Recording in progress.
All right. You can close AI companion assist. I'm sure it'll drive me crazy. Use performance audio. Ta-da!
Well, just hold on. The other thing you have to do is share your PowerPoint. Okay, get ready.
It's beeping again, and I don't know why.
That's all I could hear.
Not sure. So I think maybe we'll go ahead and get started, if we can. What? Did somebody say something to me? Okay. Oh. Hello. Can you hear that better? Huh? Hello. Do I need to put the mic up?
That's better. You're okay now.
Okay. All right. So onward and forward. Welcome to our first forum of 2026. Thanks for being here, and a huge thanks to Carol Dana for coming up with this idea and doing all the deep dive information gathering. I've been talking with her since the mid-December because we knew there was a possibility she wouldn't be able to. Yay, Carol! Oh, there you are in living Technicolor, Carol. So Carol found most of this information, and it was her idea, and then I said I would present it. So I've done a few tweaks to make it work with my brain, but it is a lot of it is her work. And so what we want to talk about today is our cultural traditions about New Year's resolutions and whether there might be a better way to look at them and how hope might fill in with that. So just to start with it, take a deep breath and think about this. Can you hear it? The sound of millions of gym memberships started this week. Books being purchased, or Kindle libraries filling up with messages that promise clarity, or discipline, or finally having control over your life. When we participate in this January ritual of making New Year's resolutions, we're telling ourselves that if we simply have the right plan, the right habits, the right mindset, then we can finally become the person we were meant to be. There are some people for whom this annual ritual is really vitally important, and it almost becomes a kind of a secular sacrament for them. This year, I'm going to do it. It's an annual recommitment to the belief that limits are a problem that have to be solved. If we can just overcome our mental block our perception that we're lazy, that we lack discipline, then the real version of life, the way it's supposed to be, will start. But what if limits aren't a problem that should be solved? When our life includes chronic illness, caregiving for a loved one, grief, uncertainty, societal chaos, or responsibilities that we didn't choose that were put on our shoulders anyway. In those times of difficulty, we learn that there really is not a cure for human limitations. We are not perfect, and we can't resolve our way to perfection, no matter how often society's message is that the only limit is you. And yet, here we are again, on the edge of a new year, still wanting to grow, still wanting to try, still hoping for change. And that's what this morning is about. What if we can rethink New Year's resolutions by focusing on hope instead of happiness or perfection or an artificial standard? And it's interesting, when you start thinking about a particular topic or a thing, in this case for me, hope, suddenly from every direction you're seeing things about that. I mean, it happens too when you buy a new car. We got an Ioniq a year ago, and suddenly there was Ioniqs everywhere we looked on the road, and I hadn't noticed them before. As soon as I started talking with Carol about hope, I started seeing articles and posts about hope. Now that might have been partly because Advent has a Sunday that's a Sunday of hope. But one of the first ones that I saw was a post on Instagram by Father Pete, who is an Episcopal priest. And Father Pete started his message by telling a story of when he was in the Middle East, decided to go to a worship service at a Palestinian church. And he was completely and utterly shocked when the priest started his message by saying, "And no, don't pray for peace in the Middle East." Father Peace said he stood up and he squared his shoulders and was like, "What does that mean? Of course we pray for peace in the Middle East." And so he started listening closely. And this priest said, "Yes, peace in the Middle East. It's a wonderful, wishful, nirvana-like, over-the-rainbow solution that we would love to see. But if we're realistic, we're not going to see it this year. We may not see it this decade. We may not see it in our lives. What you need to pray for us is that we do not lose hope. Hope is what gets us out of bed in the morning. Hope is what makes us take one more step forward. Hope is what allows us to flex when one more tragedy or unexpected change comes our way. It's a lot like the Italian proverb that says, "Hope is the last thing ever lost." When we lose hope, then we've lost everything. And so, looking at the concept of making promises and setting goals at the beginning of the new year, it's not a new thing. It's not an American thing. It's very, very old. So starting with some history or some data about this process. And so this is a little cartoon about making New Year's resolutions. And in the top left corner there, this person has a green paper and they've written New Year's resolutions. But what they are saying on there is, every year I make this stupid list. And then in the other top one, the little kid has come to look. And he says, and the father, I guess, says, and every year I fail. And so you go down to the bottom left and says, let's hope that this year can be different. And that gives him his idea for his resolutions. His resolutions are get fat, stop exercising, and start smoking. And lo and behold, by February, The kid has the list, and while Dad is doing his weightlifting, he says, "You're really failing at this job." And Dad smiles and says, "I know." And it's just a good, I think, a picture of the nonsense sometimes between for New Year's resolutions, because sometimes they aren't realistic. In 2024, YouGov surveyed 1,000 people about their New Year's resolution, and what do you think the top 5 were?
Lose weight.
Eat healthy.
Eat healthy.
Exercise.
Exercise, yes. So, yes, right in that area, almost all of them were either about finances or health. And so their top 5 were saving more money, being happy. That's a fairly ethereal, over-the-rainbow sort of thing that it's kind of like what the Palestinian priest said. You know, yes, peace in the Middle East. It sounds good. It sounds happy. It sounds like what we want, but it's probably not attainable. Exercising more, somebody said that. Improving our physical health, and eating healthier. In another survey about resolutions, they talked about who did them. How many in this room made New Year's resolutions today? So a very small number did. And what this survey found out is a little bit like this cartoon, the young person asking the old person, "Have you made a New Year's resolution?" And the old person says, "Yes, don't." And so what the survey found, the Pew Research, is that young adults make most of the resolutions, and older adults set fewer and fewer and fewer. And there might be some wisdom in that. And in fact, 70% of people opt out altogether. So it doesn't happen all that often. And why do people not make them anymore? Because we know we don't do them. In a survey in 2023 from January to June, 6% of 1,000 adults were still following through with their resolution by the end of June. 94% had already drifted away from them. But what's probably even worse is that by the end of January that year, 88% of the people had already failed and abandoned it. Fortune magazine says that there are some people that call the second day of Friday Quitter's Day because it is when people are most likely to just give up on the resolution that they made. So, how did it all begin? Because this has been going on for a long time. And so I'm looking through Carol's notes, and it says it started in Babylonia. And I'm going, well, did she spell that word wrong? I know Babylon, I know Babylonians. Feeling a little dumb, so I did what I do, Dr. Google. What's the difference between Babylon and Babylonia? Because I literally didn't know. Turns out Babylonia is a geographical area, and Babylon is the major city, center of trade, population. And I probably should have been able to figure that out. I just looked at it and said, why'd you spell Babylon, Babylonia? And so if there's anyone else in this room that joins me in needing an education, that's your trivia for the day. But it is interesting to look at the history of promises. And the first recorded time of that is in Babylonia, and it was more than 4,000 years ago. And what they did is they had a 12-day festival called Akitu, and it started in March, which was the beginning of the new year for them. It was also the beginning of the spring planting season. And in that, then, they made promises to their gods. We can pretty much be sure that they didn't promise to exercise more, or save money, or lose weight, or start a new hobby. What it appears that they did is to pledge loyalty to the king, promise to pay off their debts, and to return borrowed items to their rightful owners. And why did they do that? They believed that if they kept these promises to their gods, then the gods would treat them well in the new year that was starting. They did also believe that if they did not keep the promises, they would land squarely on the bad side of the gods, and that was not a place they wanted to be. So if we move forward a couple thousand years to ancient Rome, we all know that our current Gregorian calendar started there, and it was Caesar who began that in Rome in 46 BC. Prior to that, in Rome, the start of the year was in March, like Babylon. And so Caesar declared that January 1st was going to be the new start of the new year, and he did it to honor the Roman god Janus, who was a two-faced god. So face, this face looking back at the old year and everything you did, this face looking forward to the new year. And so then the Romans would offer sacrifices to Janus, make resolutions for good behavior to get on Janus's good side, so that things would go well in the new year. Another 1,500 years down the timeline, in the medieval period, resolutions were becoming a little bit more common, but one of the groups that did it every year were the knights. And they would renew their annual peacock vow at the end of the year. And so for knights, this was a resolution to maintain the values of the knighthood, and it was done by putting their hands on either a live or a roasted peacock. Okay. By the 17th century, New Year's resolutions were becoming more common. We can find them in writings. And so, for example, in 1671, a Scottish woman, Anne Halkett, wrote several resolutions in her diary, one of which was, "I will not offend anymore." One assumes that she might have been a little tired of the reigns of patriarchy around her, but I'm just making that up. I don't know, but that's what it makes me think of. And I do really am curious of whether she was able to pull that off, or that's a little bit like resolving to be happy. So by the 18th century, Christians were holding Mass on either New Year's Eve or New Year's Day. And part of that Mass was to have them look back on what they did the previous year and then make promises to do better in the next year. And so with that tradition having gone on for a while, a Boston newspaper then in 1813 published a story about that, and that is where the first recorded, written use of the words New Year's resolution happened. For that. So you can see that this whole plan depended on, it takes different shapes. Is it rooted in religion or in your culture? Is it your personal thing? Is it all of them? But we do know that we don't really value this tradition very much, and we don't participate in it. So how can hope bring new meaning to it today? We have learned a lot as we walked through 2025. And the first 3 days of 2026, if I might say. Some lessons came gently. Some of them arrived like a freight train, barreling through carefully laid plans and our suppositions of how our lives and how society should work. And yet, here we are, standing on the edge of a new year with all its promise and possibility and uncertainty. But as the calendar flips to a new year, there can be something profoundly hopeful about that fresh blank slate. So how do we step into focusing on hope instead of happiness or things that probably aren't that meaningful or that we won't follow. We need to start with a question of ourselves. What do I want this time to be for me? Maybe it's about feeling really close to the people you love. Maybe it's about remembering the less fortunate. Being of service. Feeling wonder at the mystery of life. Maybe all of those. Maybe none of them. Maybe a different thing for every person in this room. But there are some steps that we can take to move ourselves to more of a focus on hope. And the first of these is to embrace the value of uncertainty. We often think that we need certainty in order to feel secure, but life rarely, if ever, offers that to us. There will be, without a doubt, unexpected challenges in the next year, but there will also be unexpected joys. And do we pay attention to the unexpected joys? Do we celebrate them? Are we thankful for them? Do we share them with others as much as we focus on the unexpected challenges? And that blank calendar slate that we're looking at, it's not a guarantee of smooth sailing. But what it is a reminder that the story isn't over. And that's, again, similar to the Palestinian priest, that knowing it's not over, that's a kernel of hope. And it's what allows us to keep moving forward. Secondly, we need to turn to values that ground us. And two of those important values are gratitude and community. And I think in a place like Agnus Dei is one of the places you can really find that. In a place where we celebrate a God who is love and who loves us no matter what, that we can feel that gratitude, and we do provide community for each other. We see it happening all the time. So gratitude can shift your perspective in the present. If you are focusing on some of those moments of joy, if you're noting that those happened and celebrating them, it can shift your perspective as to what's happening in the present. And community reminds us that we're not alone. And so the two together build resilience and hope, even when life feels overwhelming. So gratitude is the daily practice of noticing the good amidst the chaos, and community is the glue that holds us together when everything else feels like it's falling apart. Third, letting go of shame and guilt. We live in a society that cheers on winning and perfection and expertise and more than most often any individual can achieve. And for too long, many of us have used shame as a motivator. Because we can't meet those standards. It might be guilt-tripping ourselves into keeping a resolution. Or it might be just judging ourselves because we're just not enough. But it's not about perfection. It's about showing up, doing our best, and letting that be enough. And when we stumble, make a mistake, insert foot A into mouth B, as we all will do, it's about picking ourselves up without allowing the weight of shame to drag us down. Fourth, focus on generating good news. This is about noticing the joyful events. We live in a world that's saturated with bad news. Headlines in newspapers, leading stories on newscasts, podcasts, social media, reels, everywhere. They're screaming chaos and catastrophe. And it's easy to feel helpless and hopeless in that kind of situation. But here's the thing. We can create good news inside ourselves by focusing on those joyful moments, sharing them with others, showing kindness and love to other people, and that generates a ripple effect that goes beyond you, beyond the person you might have been kind to, and it helps us deal with the chaos that we're seeing. And then finally, cultivate love and connection. At the heart of all of this is God's love for us. And from that, our love for ourselves, for each other, and for this messy, imperfect world that we inhabit. So what if we spend the new year resolved to finding ways to show love? Whether it's through small acts of kindness, listening deeply to somebody who really needs someone to talk to, expressing care or concern for someone, simply being present. Love is what makes life meaningful. And it's not measured in spreadsheets or grand gestures or winning first place or meeting something that culture tells us is important. It's in the effort, the intention, and the heart behind what we do. So from that, we're going to switch to talking circles. If any of you have not been in a talking circle before, there's a stick in the middle of each of your table. That's your talking stick. It is these are instructions that we found from a Native American group that encourages quality discussions, and so only the person with the talking stick is allowed to talk. Now, if you're like me, you grab the talking stick and then you start talking with your hands, and the poor person beside you is going like that. Some people just reach out and touch the talking stick. Some people pull it an inch towards them. But whoever is indicating they want to speak, then they are the only speaker for that time. And what that does is it helps eliminate side conversations. It encourages you to listen respectfully, and the person using the stick is encouraged to limit their speaking time respectfully because others might want to talk. If you are at the table with someone you don't know, introduce yourself. Remember that there are no right or wrong answers, and there is no requirement to speak. If you are not the kind of person who just starts telling all kinds of stuff to a group, then just listen. See what makes sense to you from what you hear. Mull it over later in the day. And in, a half an hour, pick one speaker from each table to share with the rest of the group something that you found out. And you will find with your stick a list of questions. They're also up here. You don't need to answer all the questions. You don't actually need to answer any of the questions. You don't need to go through them in order or start at the top. If there's something you already heard that you're mulling over and want to go a different direction, that's fine too. This is just to help encourage conversation starts, and if the conversation wanes, something else that you can charge it up with. And so then we'll come back in about a half an hour and we'll share with each other what we heard.
No kings with us. Because basically, the other two that happened. But I was quite moved with the last one they said. Because it was pretty inspirational. The people that came out. And you saw a few that made with the tail between their legs. Not saying but I guess I like this whole thing about thinking. Because you're starting to see some things change. Like Project 2025 is wonderful. People have started to fall apart. Yeah, and they're jumping on fences here. They were easily coming. And some of the elections are last month. So I'm really hopeful for November 2026. And how this flips. But I guess there's a lot of questions here that what I find most rewarding every year is just serving my kids, serving the Bullseye Museum where I volunteer my time. That's what I we had an event in Leader Associates on the 13th of December. I guess there were 2 days in a row. The 13th was we expected 600 people, 17 people. It was I was breaking traffic for 2 minutes. It was about 2 minutes. about the rises. But I think, and this gets to the concept of resolution, I think in the historical context, the Kathy gave is much more the term protest as opposed to resolution. And a lot of the examples that she provided is the historical history of the concept, all wrapped around the idea of oath. To whom?
Freedom.
When I think of it in a context, it's not just hope. It is what actions are likely to take.
Now she's complaining about she's too much.
So it's not sufficient hope. It's necessary to exhibit that commitment, that oath, as actions to achieve that goal.
Anyway, there is a hope there. She seems a little hurt.
Right, I don't believe in resolution. What are you excited to learn and try?
Every day too. We talked to this.
Be busy and engaged. What is one thing you did in 2025 that you're so financial advisor. You're trying to figure out where to go. I still wanted to spend about $200,000. And I just looked at that and said, just can't. Financial advisor, was there a way to do that?
How will you make time for the people who matter most to you? Well, I tend to wait to be motivated. And I need to do more inviting. Friends, family. I got this great name from my dad. I have a circle of 6 women friends. And I only had 2 things. Of course, I had an excuse. I was not in very good shape. But I'm feeling really positive about my health right now, so I feel good. So I'm thinking about those things, about how to connect. I want more connection. And it happens when you live alone, and then it's different. You can say, well, my best friend says, yeah, well, we don't talk here, we just drink there. And I said, well, actually, you do. You get texts from your husband 3 or 4 or 5 times during the day when he's out doing something else, and it's like, but when you live alone, when people leave, it's empty. That's hard for me. It's not my favorite thing. But I need to be inviting and start
She talks about the definition.
and that's how I want to make more connections.
A fundamental change in the way of thinking about what we want to
Ridge line was security. To the point that it was starting to threaten our psyche.
or a
So,
significant societal or cultural
I'll just have some
I'm limited to both resolution and revolution to address all ideas that have lost their usefulness and question what seems to become normalized in this industry.
last 3.5 years,
Courage is not acceptable.
350 tons of courage.
But then she says, We resolved to be part of the
Couple hundred yards
resolution,
across
going to
the
find out
property.
because of
Bulk up this area.
but I believe that this message combined with the new agenda for justice and change. This means we must ask ourselves, what would
I
things,
started that.
what does justice look like in public policy? What does decency and
I
how
agree.
we
It's
see?
well on my list.
What kind of growth do we want to actually in the next generation? If we hold the spiritual tradition as a ground and guiding force in our lives, what does the most loving expression of that tradition look like in this lives? What are our beautiful shared values and
It's a real big deal.
and of course, it's been God.
And part of that was the previous two advents, I had had a lot of that.
And to be
And I was
resolute.
prevented from doing things where I did them anyway and it hurt. And all I could look forward to was getting somebody to refer, which it feels somewhat miraculous. And so I kept telling myself, you could have done this last year. You're back where you were. You can do more. And so there was that gratitude. But I also, I'm still not quite sure why I hope like helping the families to get after high school.
Hope that she marks
And the things that I did, I don't know why, it's not made such a impression. But what I experienced this past week was, oh,
So she I like this too. So this year I'm making my own 2026 New Year's resolutions and
and so
resolutions.
I've been kind of
One, to remember our hands together and have one another's back. So that's why
how I was.
I would dare to be better, kinder, and more just, trust that the way
But all of a sudden,
not
things
like the way you
really have started popping back
to be
up.
strengthened and not be done by resolution. Allow yourself, my life is transformed by
Very much
grace.
generation, so
To be courageous,
George
to
said,
be
me,
spirit, the way forward in dance, and respect our ages
and the choir starts up on my
Remember also,
and George also said, to the four of us that are restoration justice, reminding us of last year, we turned to about black person,
I will endeavor to balance
and
rest
his email said, why didn't you go in, and what day you went?
We are always
Wait a minute.
So we pull
What
it
grade
back.
was this one, you're beginning high school?
So
So all week I've been kind of like living with myself. And it's, I think, part of the process is really what moving ahead, there's so much uncertainty. I think during there was a lot of focus on music and allergy and and so it's kind of like opening up now, like reestablishing where does that community fit into
Does anybody have any ideas on so because we're really interested Because there are like 7 at a time. It's like terrible. It's like,
there's, when Kathy was putting this together, she made the comment that people who get things done continue what they've asked to do. That's me. Constantly, I think you asked to do. Yeah, I think just a
you're looking at more outreach to more specifically to the groups that are yeah. Well, we're going to also, the next one, we're going to do detention secretary. And I don't know, I have to contact them to find out what people because I will do with the detention center. We don't, I don't even know where it is. I mean, I know in my brain, well, it's Tacoma, but yeah, I know that, but I don't know, but I never set foot in the title. Oh, it is? So, I think that outreach that we're doing is really great. I wish we could do for immigrants.
So I can put together some of these questions into the same thing. So what did we lose this year that deserves to be remembered? How many times people can have those people? And what was one thing that you didn't find that has something from? So the low-cost return
In this movie series, watch it. They used all of these phones that were not connected to everything in the world, and were very basic. This was in a movie. Okay, but they had phones that were temporary, and I don't know. Yeah, I guess so. A burger. They were using those, and I think the phones are probably that is something. A burger phone is temporary, or other phones that you can just put so many minutes on or something. And you could put it in the phone.
Just gives me a
church on so,
She's gonna be our spokesman.
so,
really nice.
so, okay, how would this be different if this is or how would this be different if the marks were
I take
or
it
whatever? There were several.
One hand, as opposed to having and then I had to wait so that your knees are hard.
Doing that, having to do that.
Outside the
Somebody else.
summer and then inside. So I waited, I packed up everything, the parts of the house. So I packed up my kitchen. And then I waited, and then, where you guys eat, because keep your plate, what's that, and so he said, right back. So I called her, I said, why did you send me those check back? Are you real? Are you no longer able to do the job? He said, no, I called you a couple of times and I couldn't get a hold of you, so I think you're not available. I said, I'm available, what's that? Oh. I said, I'm waiting months and months and months. Anyway, so finally he said, yes, I can do the job. So I said, do you have the colors? Yes, I've got them right here. So anyway, and then he wanted me to move out. I said, I have no place to go. What do you move out? We get the cash. So he wanted me to move out. I have no place to go. So through the course of this, I'm still talking, but I talked to him. So anyway, I wanted my cabinets in the kitchen, and he said, well, that would be what you had. And it was a sizable amount of it. And so I'm upstairs, and all the fire alarms went off. And I said, Adam, what the hell? What's going on? See, you should have looked at all this. Anyway, so for like 2 months this went on. Different parts of the house. But anyway, finally installed my house. So I'm very, very glad for this. It's been a long time. The parts that I paid for, the entire house is not done. The parts that I paid for are done. Thank God. And then my next question was very happy that's done. It took a long time. He did a nice job. And that's still let this work. But it was a really good conversation. And I'm sure that she would as well as I I'm here, but it's painful for me to get involved. I've been saying it on the problem, and I love to get out and safely to outside. It's just really hard for me. I was involved in the thing once. It's difficult for me to do that. Even though I think it's really, really necessary that we do things like that. It's hard for me to step out and do that. So it's very
but it's also I think to understand why
even though I think things are necessary.
but to try to
Can I just ask you, are you more at peace now that the losses right now? longer do you have?
I think, I've heard it too many times for that they're not fit.
Everybody else that seems longer does.
How long a minute is outside the agreement. That's right. And so your loss is 2 years. You never keep 2 years.
Themselves and others who are not. People who struggle with addiction. So I will be coming to your meetings on Thursday night. There was a car. But I am concerned a little bit.
I apologize. The rules say you don't have to say anything.
That's right.
But
It causes a lot of
I
I did not feel it correctly. Thank you.
I thought that
I
was
was thinking that I had to say something.
outside of detention that were there to try and see their loved one, the sandwiches and stuff. I don't, that's what I have in my head. Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't know that they'll get it inside.
So a couple more minutes and then we're going to bring you back together. So think about who might be speaking about what your conversation was about and what you might want to share.
I had some opportunity to say talks and see that. And long story short, I started with 3 years. More common sense. So I think that's good. Yeah, very much that's what he's not. He's not. That's what I'm sure. But do you see what it is? That same time. Also, yeah. When you come and start to do this, so then he says, realize that all he wants to do is it goes beyond self-awareness. So I have
I shut this off.
Oh, okay.
That's the only thing. Try it out.
Okay, still seems pretty loud. Better, yeah, that's better. Okay, if we can come back together, what table would like to share first, what they've been talking about?
I think we touched on all of the questions. I think if there's one thing or one or two things I could say we're all agreed on. We all agreed on the importance of hope and how important it is to maintain hope. And I think a lot of us feel what I call a sense of purpose, and we're exploring ways, or some of us already know of ways, that we can contribute that are meaningful to us and may bring hope and joy to others.
My short-term memory isn't what it used to be. Okay, like what did we start out talking about? I don't know anymore. We talked about a lot of things. Everybody talked, every person talked, and talked quite a bit, I think. It was a nice discussion. What we ended up talking about was the plight of immigrants, and that the question, what do you hope to make room for next year, not as a resolution, but as a holy invitation? I think that's kind of what we settled on, is that we need to do, I don't know whether I want to say more, but we need to be involved in helping immigrants. The next 2 months of what do we call that, Ronnie? Outreach, yeah, local outreach, I guess. Okay, one is a church that is mostly a home for Venezuelans, until they find permanent housing, is to provide, I'm not sure what we're providing yet, but to provide stuff for them. And then the month after that, we're going to do the detention center. And, I've never seen the detentions. I've been here 9 years. I've never seen the detention center. I know it's in the tide flats, but I don't know where the tide flats are. And I really feel kind of like I'm disconnected from, my whole life is disconnected from that. And I feel like I want a personal connection with that. I don't know whether the others would agree with that, but anyway, that's where we ended up, was to be involved in the plight of immigrants.
We talked through a lot of different topics, but we landed with being uncertain is okay, and we don't measure success in uncertainty. Has anybody had a conversation that says, hey, how was your uncertainty today? Did you accomplish a lot of uncertainty? So we'll just be a little bit more open to uncertainty.
We didn't really go through each and every question at our table. We did look at some things that, one was the idea of rhythms, patterns, and part of that is God's creation, which is so rhythmic. Whether it's day and night, or whether it's seasons, or just whatever. And we talked about how the church here is a rhythm, and being part of a community that worships together, and the rhythms that are there. And what a blessing that those things are for community. And the uniqueness of the fact that we have such a variety of people within a congregation with different backgrounds, but just respecting and understanding one another. The other thing that was discussed was someone had read something about resolutions and revolutions, and what that is about, and how we need to be having both. Revolutions being changes, making something better. That's kind of fits in with that theme of hope, as well as being resolute in terms of trying to go forward with those. And we also talked about the whole thing of how do we, as we interact with other people, whether that's here on the state or our neighbors, our friends, our relatives, who we may not see something through the same lens. We may disagree in things that are fairly important to us. And how do we deal with that? And as we think about relating to people, and we talked about starting out with respect and trying to say, tell me more, listening, being open. Not that we are even going to change maybe how we see things, but just to be respectful, to understand how others see things, and to continue to work on that sense of community.
Thank you, everybody. It seemed like there was good conversations going on this topic.
You want to ask Carol what she has to say?
Carol, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I have to unmute. Just to thank you, Kathy, for all you did.
You are quite welcome. You did the yeoman's work there of getting the information together. So I think it turned out to be an important topic. So thank you. In closing, last night, as I was watching the Seahawks become champions, I was also tooling through Facebook, and our friend Pastor Tom Aitken posted something that I thought was very relevant to this. And it's a quote from Howard Zinn. And he says, "To be hopeful in bad times is not just foolishly romantic. It's based on the fact that human history is a history not only of cruelty, but also of compassion, sacrifice, courage, and kindness. What we choose to emphasize in this complex history will determine our lives. If we see only the worst, it destroys our capacity to do something. If we remember those times and places, and there are so many, where people have behaved magnificently, this gives us the energy to act, and at least the possibility of sending this spinning top of a world in a different direction. And if we do act, in however small a way, we don't have to wait for some grand utopian future. The future is an infinite succession of presents, and to live now as we think human beings should live, in defiance of all that is bad around us, is itself a marvelous victory." I thought that was a great summation of what we were trying to focus on. So this year, let's approach our blank calendar with hope, not because we know what lies ahead, but because we know who we are and whose we are and who we're becoming. Let's focus on gratitude, embrace uncertainty, and let love be our guide. So here's to a new year filled with learning, loving, and living with hope.
Good job.